Picture this. It's 1934, and the United Kingdom, along with many other countries, are increasingly worried by Germany's massive rearmament efforts and realize they have almost no way to effectively or accurately detect incoming bombers before they're directly overhead and it's too late. Rumors are spreading that Germany has developed a death ray, radio waves that can destroy enemy aircraft or kill from a massive distance. And it prompts the question, how can we defend ourselves if we can't even see what's coming? It's not like this was an irrational fear. The air defense system of the early 1930s was basically sound mirrors and giant concrete dishes on the coast with a person sitting in front of them listening for the sound of plane engines. It kind of worked if the wind was calm and nobody was driving past, but if you wanted more than about 4 minutes of warning, it was pretty much useless. I'm Peter, and 6 years ago I moved from the United States to Scotland. I am fascinated by the fact that this tiny country I now call home is responsible for so many amazing human achievements, which we all take for granted. So today I'm talking about a Scottish invention that changed the world. You might be asking what Scotland specifically has to do with the United Kingdom's air defense systems in the war effort. Well, to find that out, we have to go all the way back to the late 1800s. The town of Brechin in Scotland was primarily known as an industrial center for linen and flax manufacturing, and in 1892, Patrick and Mary Watson-Watt had their fifth son, Robert. Robert wouldn't grow up to be a master carpenter like his dad, but instead was destined to much bigger accomplishments. And while I couldn't find any evidence to support this, he did claim to be a descendant of James Watt, who invented the steam engine, so perhaps groundbreaking inventor kind of runs in the family. He was a top student throughout his educational upbringing and studied engineering at what is now the University of Dundee, where he graduated in 1912. After university, his physics professor, William Petty, personally mentored him in the physics of radio waves. At the time, this was an obscure, cutting-edge field called wireless telegraphy, and that one relationship arguably planted the seeds for everything that followed. In World War I, Robert Watson-Watt worked as an assistant in the university's engineering department, and he actually tried and failed to get a communications job with the War Office. When that failed, he ended up joining the meteorological office instead, and his job was using radio signals given off by lightning to detect and locate thunderstorms remotely so they could warn pilots of dangerous weather coming. It's kind of like he already solved a miniature version of the World War II problem 20 years before it began. In the early 1920s, he moved to a new research center. In 1927, he became head of the radio research station, and in 1933, he was appointed superintendent of the radio department at the National Physical Laboratory. By early 1935, he'd spent nearly 20 years working his way through government radio science, and he was Britain's senior civil service radio physicist. That's when the Air Ministry came to him specifically for help and asked if he could build Britain their own death ray. He and his assistant Arnold Wilkins ran the numbers, and they very quickly proved that it was physically impossible to generate enough power to do it. That Nazi rumor about having a death ray did later turn out to be false, but instead of just saying it can't be done, Robert Watson-Watt pitched a different, much better idea. You can't kill a plane with radio waves, but maybe you can find it. About a month later, they had their first low-key secret test of this technology. Arnold Wilkins suggested they use a BBC shortwave transmitter in Daventry. Only a few people even watched it. Watson-Watt, Wilkins, and one Air Ministry representative were there. They had a bomber fly through the beam with a crude receiver that picked up the faint blip in the signal from about 8 miles away. and that moment was essentially the birth of radar. After this test, a 10,000-pound secret government grant was given to develop it further, and they were able to improve it a lot in just a few months. About 15 miles by June, 40 miles by September, and by the end of the year, they were even able to detect aircraft up to about 90 or 100 miles away. That system finally got a name. They called it Chain Home because it was literally a chain of coastal radar stations with giant masts about 360 feet tall. But officially, the British military called it RDF. That name implied Radio Direction Finding, which was already in use. They purposely chose this boring, not super descriptive name to try to keep it obscure and help with security. The term radar wasn't coined until the 1940s by the US and stands for Radio Detection and Ranging. The system was operational by the end of 1938, and they had about 20 stations covering mainly the east and south coasts of the UK by the time World War II broke out. Yes, other people and countries had been working on trying to develop their own radar systems, but Watson Watt was the first to actually deliver by turning the underlying science and concept into a practical working radar air defense system. Chain Home gave roughly 20 minutes of advance warning, which was game-changing because it gave them enough time to scramble fighters exactly where they were needed instead of having to waste fuel on constant patrols or have men staring at concrete dishes all day just listening. This exact system was a decisive factor in the RAF holding off the Luftwaffe, even though they were outnumbered, in the Battle of Brechin. Watson Watt was knighted in 1942, and his technology ended up leading to many other advancements for the war effort, like fitting radar to night fighters and technology to locate German U-boat transmissions. He even was called to advise the United States on their air defense systems after Pearl Harbor. Many historians agree that winning the Battle of Britain in 1940 is what kept the UK in the war at all, and it was made possible in part by using the Chain Home system with the Dowding system. This is how they relayed and communicated the radar information to the chain of command and the pilots in the air. The UK was undefeated, unoccupied, and available as basically a staging ground for everything else that came after. I think it's fairly safe to say that without this Scottish man, Sir Robert Watson Watt, and his team, there's a real possibility that our history of World War II would look completely different than it does now. Another interesting thing about the Chain Home and Dowding system is that the stations weren't only operated by scientists. The people actually watching the screens were overwhelmingly young women in the Women's Auxiliary Air Force. The first director of that Women's Auxiliary Air Force was Dame Catherine Trephissis Forbes. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. And much later on, in 1966, Watson Watt married her. So the man behind the system married the woman who was in charge of the people operating it. In the decades since World War II, there have been many advancements and improvements to Watson Watt's original radar system. And while at any given point in time there are about 8 to 20,000 aircraft in the air, it actually goes far beyond just keeping our skies safe. His original focus of weather forecasting, of course, has massive benefits from this technology, letting us track rain, snow, storms, and wind speeds in real time, but it's not just that. Modern cars use short-range radar for things like adaptive cruise control and blind spot detection. We have ground-penetrating radar for inspecting tunnels and locating pipes. They use it in space to map planetary surfaces and detect space debris. And there are so many other smaller use scenarios that just might not have existed until much later without the brilliant mind of this one Scottish man. So that's the story of how one Scottish invention helped save Britain in the war. It might not sound as cool as a death ray, but in reality, I think having technology to keep our skies safe is much cooler than yet another weapon of mass destruction. One last thing, this isn't a verified fact, but supposedly a few decades after he invented radar, he was in Canada and the police pulled him over for speeding using a radar gun. Evidently, he said, "If I'd known what you were going to do with it, I wouldn't have invented it." Anyways, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of this video. Let me know in the comments what your favorite Scottish invention is, and I might use that as a topic for my next Scottish Inventions video. If you want to help support what I do on this channel, there's also a cheeky link down in the description where you can buy me a coffee. And since you're already here, you should keep binging my content by checking out this video next. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.